This is Sarah Linden, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people out there. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and motivate all your friends and casual acquaintances to do the same thing. I didn't know this when we started our podcast that we'd have such a connection to Nebraska. And that trend continues. And also we have a first. This is the first time we've had a married couple on our podcast. So I'm very excited for today's guest because she's a mom, a boss lady, an entrepreneur, the true value add in the Linden family. She's the founder and CEO of Generation V, where Nebraskans and Iowans go there for healthier and more enjoyable alternatives to smoking. Please welcome the wonderful, the fabulous Sarah Linden. How are you, Sarah?
Hi, thank you, Matt. That was a generous introduction.
Well, you're generous for being here because we had Chris on, who was, one of our favorite guests. So it was a little awkward because I've known him for 30 plus years. And then within 4 minutes, he and Eric are best friends. So I was a little offended, but also happy I helped cultivate such a friendship. But we're curious, Sarah, any tips on getting Chris to talk less?
Well, first of all, he makes friends with everyone within a few seconds of meeting them.
So basically, you're not special, Eric. Is that what you're saying?
He knows everybody by name, I think, that lives in Lincoln, Nebraska, and has probably talked to them at the gym or the grocery store or somewhere. So he's just a charismatic guy all around, and you can't get him to not talk unless it's 10 p.m. at night and he's sitting down to eat his dinner, and then he literally wants everybody to be asleep or in another room or something, because when he eats, he wants to be completely alone and not talking to anyone.
He's a lone eater. Well, also, he's a frequent traveler, and I follow him on Instagram. But when you're on vacation, Sarah, can he go more than 14 minutes without posting a picture of himself?
I don't know. He thinks he posted a couple things a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and he got hundreds of people liking and sharing it. Now he thinks that he's going to be an influencer on Instagram or something.
He's
so now
the new,
he's trying
Rob Kardashian. Yeah, this. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I did like Chris, but and nothing. He was kind of a rabble rouser, and I think he and Eric bonded over kind of being rebellious law students. And he had a clip which we just shared about contrasting studying at law school to your NYU experience. I want to get your take, Sarah. How would you react to your husband's comment that you were enjoying yourself while studying?
Yeah, and he was working day and night and studying. Yeah. There is some truth to it. I don't think that business school is necessarily super easy. You can definitely float. There's plenty of people who just float through because it doesn't really matter what grades you get. At NYU and some of the top schools, companies aren't allowed to ask for your grades. So a lot of people didn't really care what grades they got. They were just trying to pass. I graduated summa cum laude, so I am not that person.
Oh, wow. I did not. So congratulations. I was more of the adage, they call it B school, not A school, but please tell us about how you're acing your classes.
Well, my classes were all applied, so I didn't have a lot of exams and things. It was all project-based. So they gave you a scenario, and then you create a whole plan around it for the entire semester, and then you pitch it at the end of the year. And so it was obviously there's some 101 classes that have exams and regular assignments, but most of it was really just applied. And so it was much different than law school, where you're cramming for exams and you're studying the material the entire year, and then boom, all of your grade, it falls on one day, one exam for each class. My experience wasn't like that at all.
So it sounds like you had more of a case study focus.
Yeah.
And Chris and Eric were talking about different ways to change law school. And I think one common theme was shorten it and have people learn more from practicing attorneys. You have a lot of experience in the real world and in business, Sarah. What changes or I guess alterations would you like seeing in either business school or undergraduate classes in general?
So I really enjoyed business school. I thought that it was really great because it was all real world experiences and that you were given, and then you had to come up with things, usually in groups with people who had, about 5 years of real world experience that they were bringing to the table, because most business schools don't allow you in until you've worked after undergrad for 5 years in business. And so you have different people with different perspectives bringing different things to the table, and you really learn from each other as well. Mm-hmm. But I think they should get rid of the whole 4-year undergrad degree. I think it's complete BS that you have to take. I took women in popular culture. I took metaphysics. I mean, so many classes that I will never use. And the way
if you spend time on Twitter, that might come in handy. I just want to play devil's advocate.
I think it's just ridiculous, the classes. I mean, obviously, colleges are businesses too. And so I understand why they make you take all these classes you don't need and go for 4 or sometimes even 5 years now to graduate because of the number of credits that you need. So I get why they're doing it. I just don't think that it's good for the students. And even when we did take a marketing class, for instance, it's all theory based. So when I got out into the real world, I didn't know how to apply anything that I had learned. It doesn't matter who came up with what idea of some kind of framework if I don't even know how to use the framework, So right. I really detest colleges and universities like the 4-year degree. I wish you could just skip directly to business school, or, I encourage people to go into trades, because a lot of people graduate with a 4-year degree and a ton of debt, and then they can't get a job in their chosen field anyway.
Right.
So it's just ridiculous. And then the thing that really gets me is liberal arts universities that allow people to study and graduate with degrees in Russian literature and things that you can never, there's no jobs in it unless you want to go be a professor and get your PhD in Russian literature. It does nothing for you. And I legit know people who have gotten degrees and stuff like that. And I just think they're crazy.
My undergrad had a degree in ethnomusicology. So I think Russian literature might be even more marketable if we want to split hairs. But I guess kind of looking at the other side, there's kind of the, vocational aspect that I think, you kind of seem to be advocating for education. But then some might counter with, well, this is life enrichment. Studying Russian literature gives you a more fruitful existence. What would you say to either those people or that argument, Sarah?
I think that those people drink with their pinkies up.
Yes, we do.
I think it's kind of pretentious. I mean, if you're gonna learn things so that you can be worldly, then go out and live in the world. Move to New York City for a couple years, backpack around the world. I mean,
get a library card and read Russian literature in your free time, right?
Yeah, I just think I know that that's their excuse, is that, they're making more well-rounded people, but nobody remembers what they studied in those metaphysics classes and stuff anyway.
That's true. Well, now that you've been in the real world, what are some of the big lessons you've gleaned from starting businesses?
Well, I I feel very fortunate that I did go to business school. It is helpful, especially, when starting a business. I was like employee number one. So I had to do marketing, finance, operations, management, HR, and going to business school, I had, even though that finance wasn't my focus per se, I had to have a few finance classes. So I knew some things. And then luckily, I did go into corporate America before starting a business. So I also learned quite a bit from my experiences there that I could apply to business. And really kind of my first few jobs out of business school really kind of put a bow on it all for me. Mm-hmm. But I was in brand management, which is kind of like you're a mini CEO in a giant corporation. Mm-hmm. Like you manage a brand. So like for Nestle, I manage a $2 billion business.
Wow. So was Nestle your first job in corporate America, so to speak?
You want to know what my first internship, I got to sell and market tampons.
Nice. Well, I hope you held on to some now. They're in high demand. I should say there's a shortage. Yeah.
I heard that. I don't know what'll be next. We'll see.
Yeah.
But no, my first full-time gig, I sold or marketed pacifiers and breast pumps. Also very glamorous.
No, all the stuff that are so needed now, like baby formula, feminine hygiene, you just are ahead of the game, Sarah. So that's we're lucky to have you on. I want to know where to invest next. So I'll do that off air.
Okay.
So I can really capitalize. But so you joined corporate America, then you kind of work your way up. You're managing billions of dollars worth for Nestle. But where or when did you learn that you had this entrepreneurial drive?
So I always have. Even back before I went to business school, I had started a couple businesses, but it was while working for other people, and I just kind of let the businesses slide. And I am like the biggest business geek ever. So I write business plans in my spare time for fun. I've probably written over 200 business plans.
Wow.
To me, business is like playing a video game. So like those people that nerd out over games and they'll play for hours, I'm like the same way with business. So I have had many, many, many business ideas over the years. I probably have 25 good ones, semi-good ones now. But most of them took a lot of capital, and I wasn't raised with the money. Like my parents weren't wealthy. They're blue collar factory worker and a mailman. And so I never had the money to invest into a business to get it going. And a lot of investors really want to see that you have some skin in the game and that you've been able to perform at least up to a certain point before they invest in you. And I just could never get to that point. Plus, I'm a horrible sharer. So I really don't do well with partners or investors or anything like that. I do not share well. So I got into vaping, even though it's not the most glamorous, but some of Chris's friends actually in California had opened a vape shop, and they were telling me, that was making $30,000 a month, which is not much. And they had only put 30 grand into it. And I was like, well, this is something I can maybe come up with $30,000 or $40,000. I couldn't come up with hundreds of thousands. And so they actually asked me to join them to start franchising it to other people. And so I was still working at ConAgra at the time in corporate America and trying to do that on the side, but I needed to leave my day job. And so I opened a vape shop of my own. Well, the whole deal fell apart because they would rather go surfing. They lived in California. I mean, who can?
Yeah, we Californians are that way. I get it, especially if there's an offshore breeze. We don't want to look at business plans or spreadsheets. It's quite taxing.
And so, so they pretty much gave up. And they actually gave me the boot and my friend who had gotten me into it. And so then I just was like, well, I have a vape shop and I guess I'm going to open more vape shops. But
yeah, I want to press pause briefly. So you just have a vape shop. I mean, it isn't just, you don't like, it's like finding $5 on the couch or something like there's
Yeah.
red tape, laws, capital.
Yeah.
Like, how does one just have a vape shop, Sarah?
Well, I was lucky because they did give me some information, about like, I didn't even know what a vape was. I'd never even seen one, heard of one.
Oh, bless your heart.
So they introduced me to all of that and the products and whatnot. But yeah, you have to get licenses. There's quite a bit that you have to figure out that I don't think people realize when they're starting a business, like just all the legal paperwork, permits, tax stuff that you have to file. And I was lucky that my parents loaned me $40,000 from their like retirement account and let me get going. And like, by God, I was going to make it work because it wasn't even my money and my parents didn't have money. Like if my parents were super wealthy, I might have just blown it off and been like, it's
drop in the bucket.
Nothing. Yeah. But because I had taken their money and I knew that they didn't have any money, it was like I had to make it work. So like getting it all set up and everything, that's so I'm used to critical paths. They have critical paths in marketing where like, a Gantt chart, and you have to do this task before this one can be done in this one. Well, so I basically created a critical path of like 300 plus items to do. And then literally, as my husband says, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like went through and like checked off all the things as I was like getting it open. But what is cool about it is like, once I am a very systematic person. So I had that checklist before I even ever opened. And I still use that same exact checklist. And now like we've gotten it down to a science where we can open like 2 stores in a month if we want to.
Wow.
Like because it's all systematic and a process. But yeah, I mean, I would say it's not a hard thing to like open a business if someone tells you what things you have to do and you can figure it out and you just take the steps and do the footwork. I think what's harder is the actual operating of a business, making the business successful, scaling a business. In the first few months of Gen V, it was not successful, like not at all.
Yeah, can you tell us, Sarah, when was the first store, the first Generation V store? Where was it and what year was it?
So it opened in January of 2014 in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
And it was pretty dead. And so the reason my parents had loaned me the money was because they didn't want me to pull it out of my 401k. But like by May or so, go backwards. In January, so one of the things that Chris asked me before I opened this vape shop, because he's risk averse, right? So he doesn't like
with his own money. With other people, he seems very risk tolerant. But go ahead, sir.
Maybe. So he was like, "Well, what are you going to do if it fails?" And I was like, "It's not going to fail. Like, there's no way. I'm not going to let it fail." And so that's something that we joke about a lot. And even like in January in the blistering cold here, when the business wasn't doing well, I was like, I made a like sign on foam board, like a big arrow. And I tried to pretend like I was one of those fancy dancy sign spinners that you see in California that like they rock out and they do all kinds of crazy tricks. It didn't work for me.
If my NYU classmates could see me now.
Yeah. But I literally stood in the cold, wind, rain, spitting the sign in front of my store, trying to get people to come in. And by like May, business still wasn't like fantastic. We weren't like losing money by any means, but it's like, if I'm going to get this going, I got to do something. And so I took all my money out of my 401k, like another 37 grand, and put it into inventory that I knew was hot. And then boom, basically my business took off. And within like a couple months, we had people driving from Omaha, which is an hour away, to come to my store. And so we just like flipped and opened another one in Omaha. And literally like the growth in the beginning was like, again, I was a one-man show. I had people who worked in the stores that I never did. I'm not good with people. I don't play well with others. Like, you don't want me anywhere near people. And so I would just kind of sit in the back and do all the bookkeeping and whatnot, marketing. But I was able to and I was still working at ConAgra full time, by the way, for like the first year and a half.
Okay, but did any of your ConAgra colleagues know about your side hustle?
No. Nope, because I worked from 8 p.m. at night until 2 or 3 in the morning. And I slept 3 hours, maybe 4 hours a day for like a year and a half.
And didn't you have your kids just were accommodating? They're like, mommy needs to sleep, so we're just not going to wake up and cry, or what did they do?
My son was 10 months old.
Oh, Lord.
So I would wake up every day at 5 a.m. with my son because he was an early riser. And I would take care of him, take him to daycare at 7. Well, no, I'd leave at 7, drop him off, drive to Omaha, an hour away, go to work at ConAgra, leave at 4:30, come back home, pick him up by 6, take care of him, bathe him, feed him until 8, put him down for sleep at 8, work from 8 until 2 or 3 in the morning on Gen V. And then I would basically go to sleep and do it again, like over and over every day. Even on the weekends, I didn't drive to ConAgra, but I would work the entire weekend. So this is how I did all my work. This is scary, but driving on the interstate, I'm editing photos and like all of my like social media posts and graphics, and I'm sending all my emails. I'm doing my finance on my phone in my car.
Wow, you're multitasking. Well, meanwhile, Sarah, during this whole time, I think Chris reviewed 3 term sheets. So he was upholding his end of the bargain too. So we don't want to shortchange Chris. So you have this ridiculous drive. You start one shop, it does well, then you start another. At what point, Sarah, are you like, all right, we can really develop some critical mass here? When did that happen?
That didn't happen for a while. It took like 4 or 5 years of just grinding, like literally managing cash flow down to like the penny, just to like maneuver to continue opening stores when there wasn't like enough profit to like open the store on profit and pay myself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take a paycheck for the first year and a half, which is why I could open 2 stores right away. Okay. But then like when we were starting to build momentum, then regulation happened that made me pull back from opening. Then we would start to build momentum again, more regulation. So
wait, time out. So there's regulation in the vape industry. Do tell.
Yeah. So I don't want to get into like my whole conspiracy theory where you guys think I'm
come
crazy,
on. But, just like an appetizer of the conspiracy theory, maybe.
Yeah. So there's one company in particular that makes every quit smoking aid, nicotine replacement therapy on the market. It's Pfizer. So they make Chantix, Wellbutrin, the patch, the gum, the lozenges, right? And they are lobbying hard. They're investing in a lot of these like kind of fake NGOs. They invest in the American Medical Association, American Heart Association, American Lung Association, American Cancer Society. They invest, millions and millions of dollars into these entities. These entities turn around and invest into groups like Tobacco Free Kids and PAVE and all these different groups that are like anti-vaping. And because vaping really took off and started to eat away at Pfizer's business. So they have this like convoluted way of fighting vaping with all this messaging and lobbying and advocacy efforts. And so there's a lot of misinformation that's been spread. There's and it's very challenging now because a lot of legislators and things believe, if I'm going up and talking to a legislator and I'm giving them all these facts that are 100% true, And then American Cancer Society comes in with and says something that's like data from like 4 years ago. And it's not even, it's twisted and spun in such a way to make it sound really like vaping is horrible, but really it's spun and manipulated data. The legislator is going to believe the American Cancer Society, right?
Right.
And so that's been the challenge all along, is like, they're very good. They have a lot of money. They're way smarter than most vape shop owners. But
not this vape shop owner. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, maybe. They definitely have a lot more brains on it. But yeah, they're able to pass different regulations. So like a few years ago, there was a regulation that passed the FDA that all vaping products had to be approved and regulated by the FDA. That was the first.
Wait, so the FDA passed something that gave the FDA more power?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then that was the first like pullback. And then they've done things like banned the flavored pre-filled pods. That actually doubled my business though.
How so? I'm curious.
So they got rid of the product that was most used. It was the most popular product that you could buy in convenience stores. And they left open a whole product category that was very similar. Mm-hmm. Well, I read all the regulations, like every page, every footnote. And in one of the footnotes, it said...
I think you're the only person in America who's done that, but please continue.
In the footnote, it said that this specific product type would remain legal. So I went out and bought like $400,000 worth of that product type. And then the whole market shifted to that product like overnight. And so I was able to like win all of that business essentially.
Wow. That's impressive. And what year was this, Sarah?
That was in, I think 2000. No, it might have been 2019 or not 2019 or 2020.
Okay, because go ahead, sir.
So literally like my business doubled overnight and our profit quadrupled that year. And we reached economies of scale. You asked like, when was it that you reached that? That was what did it, because we were just kicking through so much business, so much volume through with the same overhead that it was just spewing money. Like really thought money did grow on trees back then. So there's been other regulation now that's taken it down a little bit, but we're at critical mass now where we're doing very well. We have 21 locations.
Oh yeah, I read 13, but that was, I guess a week passed and some more locations. So 21 locations. Where are these locations, Sarah?
Yeah. So we're opening about one a month right now. So you might have looked at something from last year.
Yeah, it was so last season. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah. But so we're in Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. And we also have dispensaries. I don't know if Chris told you about that, but so we have Grateful Green as well as Gen B now. And so we have 3 dispensaries and we're opening 2 more in the next month. And we have 18 vape shops and we're opening another one in the next month.
18 vape shops are open now. And I imagine you're employing people at these vape shops?
Yeah, we have about 150 team members.
150 team members. And I read your bio. I like it's one thing I like about the vape industry and even just dispensaries in general. There's still personality in a lot of them, and your shop is evidence of that. How did the kind of community respond initially, and how has that changed over the last, call it, 7-8 years?
Well, I think in the very beginning, people didn't really understand what it was. And a lot of how people learned about it was through word of mouth and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then, more and more, it started to pick up a lot of steam. A lot of people thought it was a fad and was going to go away. Obviously, it didn't. There's so much bad publicity now that literally 75% of Americans think that vaping is worse for you than smoking. So
it's not. I'm joking with you, but I think that's really sad. Like I was at one of my kids' schools, and there was a sign, something to that effect, like vaping and smoke is smoking, and it just reeked of the worst kind of propaganda. It's one thing to say, maybe your kids shouldn't put vape sticks in their mouth, but
right.
to kind of spin it where it's just such nonsense, like it just, like, to say it's no different or possibly worse than smoke, it's ridiculous. But you have more of a kind of boots on the street understanding of this. And can you share with our audience, like, what are some of the misconceptions about vaping, and what's some of the truth that you can share with us, Sarah?
So, well, the first truth is that the Royal College of Physicians did research a few years ago, and they actually found that vaping is at least 95% healthier than smoking. They think it's like 97, 98%, but because it wasn't a long-term study, they can't say 100, they can't give a definitive percentage. And there's a lot of research out there that shows like it's twice as effective as other like nicotine replacement therapies, like the gum or the patch, at helping people quit. Some of the things that, like the myths that I hear, is it gives people popcorn lung. Like there's a chemical in some vape juice, not in all, that's diacetyl is what it's called. And it is something that's used to make popcorn. So in popcorn factories, years and years ago, before specific regulations on manufacturing of popcorn, people would get popcorn lung from the diacetyl in the popcorn, because like you're getting this oil based into your lungs. If there's not enough, like, what's the word I want to use? Like air exchange in the building when you're making popcorn and putting this butter on the popcorn. And so people would get popcorn lung from that. And because vaping, like some, not very many, but a few like flavors of vaping e-liquid has that diacetyl, people would say that vaping gives you popcorn lung. However, there's never been any cases of popcorn lung with vaping, and the amount that you're breathing is so small of the diacetyl that it can't give you popcorn lung. So there's just things like that. And then people will say there's like you're inhaling fine metals and things. Literally, there's studies that even the government themselves, like the CDC, has done themselves on the air quality of like vaping versus like anything else. And they've said the vapor and the stuff that's in there, it evaporates so quickly that like there's no harm in being around it 24/7. So then why does the CDC turn around and then say something else? But there is metal on the like coils and things like that. And so it's not 100% perfect, right? Like there's the only thing healthier than vaping is not inhaling anything, right? But there's also studies that show that vaping is better for you than breathing exhaust fumes from a car. So like we're always breathing stuff that's not great for us. And vaping, obviously not vaping or smoking or doing anything is better than vaping, but it's relatively healthy.
Yeah, and I think just kind of from a layperson's perspective, if I'm sitting next to Eric and he was like puffing on Marlboros, it's going to be like on my shirt. You'll notice it. It'll stink. But if he has his vape pen and there's the same amount of time he's smoking, like I won't notice it. It won't be on his shirt. And I mean, and a big issue with smoking, it was secondhand smoke, and part of it was just the inconvenience of it smells gross. I'm getting like these clouds of carcinogens in my face. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, Sarah, where this is a much safer alternative to that. Now, is it 95% safer? Is it 96? I'm not going to split hairs, but I think it's pretty safe to assume it's much safer. And, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s, there was this huge push on MTV and other outlets that targeted young people, you know, the truth and stop smoking. And this seemed like such a godsend. It seemed like such a great way to reduce smoking in young people. I mean, not just young people, but people in general. And then there's this like backlash. I mean, what say you, Sarah Linden?
So, I mean, that's what when I speak to legislators and I speak at a lot of public hearings and things, that's exactly what I say is like, this should be championed. Like cigarettes are killing 500,000, 480,000 people a year. Like, we should be championing anything that gets people off of cigarettes. And I lost my grandma to lung cancer when I was 15, which is why I have a lot of passion for this industry. And like, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, you have something that's so much healthier and you have people dying over here. You don't have anybody dying from this, but you have a lot of people dying from cigarettes. Why wouldn't you like champion it? And like the UK, you can vape in hospitals. The UK government gives you everybody like a free starter kit if they want to quit vaping. I mean, you can vape anywhere there. So it is crazy the tact that the United States has taken versus some other countries. But it really comes down to big pharma having really deep pockets, big tobacco. I mean, their lobbying power is just huge. It's like David and Goliath. I mean, it's so hard to overcome, like the money and investment and connections they have and the lobbyists. It's really difficult. And that's where all this misinformation and stuff comes from.
Interesting. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that e-cigarettes came out initially as a smoking cessation product, designed to help people quit or reduce smoking. However, I think it was the FDA or some other three-letter agency said, you can't market this as smoking cessation. So therefore, it kind of morphed into something that maybe young people would like. I mean, what's your understanding of that?
That's actually a good point. I haven't really thought of it like that, but yeah. I mean, the only reason that these products were invented was to help people stop smoking. And yeah, we're not allowed to say that it's safer than smoking or promote it as a stop smoking aid or anything without a marketing order that says that we can. And nobody's going to get that because it's a lot of research and money that would have to go into it to get that. And I don't even think the FDA would issue one anyway, but yeah. And unfortunately, then the only way to market it was like by the flavors or, fun names and stuff like that. And then, yeah, it does make it more appealing to youth. I would say we did have a huge youth issue 2 years ago in 2019. There were about 28% of high school students had used a vaping device in the past 30 days, had used it at least once. That doesn't mean that they're addicted, but they've at least experimented, right?
They've been exposed to the devil's oil. Yeah, go ahead, please.
But that's the number that always gets thrown at us is like the 28%, because that seems like a lot, right? And then they give you the sheer number and it's millions of teenagers. But what they don't say is like how many at that time were vaping regularly, because, kids experiment. And that number was only like 9% at the time. Well, because of some of the regulations and changes, like they raised the minimum age to vape to 21, that drew that number down significantly. So now it's only 10% of high schoolers who have vaped within the last month.
But
And
15 have tried fentanyl during that time, I'm guessing, or something like that.
yeah, and then 3% are vaping every day. 45% have drove drunk.
Wow.
15% are using marijuana. 55% are texting and driving. I mean, it's all relative.
98% are not listening to their parents when they say go to bed. So there's a lot of stats to be added here.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, you've created these businesses and you've run them. What's more difficult, Sarah, launching them or keeping them going?
Definitely keeping them going.
Why is that?
It's a constant balancing act. There's a lot of things that are challenging. One is that like it's not new anymore, right? So like the excitement for an entrepreneur is like it's really exciting to launch a brand, not as exciting to operate and grow one. But I think that like scaling a business is definitely not for the weak of heart. Like it takes a lot of balance of mainly cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people fail for a lot of reasons. Like they run out of stamina. So like it's hard work. It's constant hard work. You never get a break. I work when I'm on vacation. I get woke up at 3 a.m. to work. It's never ending. People don't open with enough capital, and I didn't either. Like I was on a shoestring budget. If I wouldn't have made the business profitable within like a couple months, I would have gone bankrupt. But most people don't open with a lot of capital. They just open with like their startup expenses, and they actually say you should have at least a year and a half of operating expenses in the bank just for like capital to float on. And a lot of ego is a huge reason why people fail in business. Ego can make us make really bad decisions. Like we want to be like spend $200,000 opening a store. So it's like top of the line. And like we can show pictures to our friends who are in the industry and they can be jealous of how snazzy it is. And really like we need like $30,000 to open a store, And I think that a lot of people just mismanage their funds. They use the business account to pay personal expenses. Mm-hmm. They overspend. They overhire as well. Like one of the things that it's been a struggle, it's made it really difficult, but like I've stayed lean the entire time. So like for the first couple of years, I was the only like administrative team member.
Wow.
Then like I slowly, when I had 4 stores, I hired someone to manage like as a district manager, regional manager. Then like finally I hired like a graphic designer to do some marketing stuff. Like literally only last year I hired an HR person, a marketing manager, a finance manager. Like I was doing everything. And a director of operations. So like before that, it literally was just like, there was a regional manager, a graphics person, me, and a purchasing manager to purchase inventory. That was it.
You were boss lady to the fullest extent possible, Sarah, and we applaud that here. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started these businesses? I don't know. I mean, there's definitely been lessons learned, but I don't know if I would have believed them if it wouldn't have happened to me. I do think that there's something to be said for people who hire, and it's a balancing act, but hire people with a lot of experience. The way that I ran was we hired our guests who shopped with us. We turned them into sales associates, assistant managers, store managers. Then we moved them into purchasing or another area. And that requires a lot of training. It's pretty much everybody's learning from me, and I don't know everything.
And when I hired my first person who actually came with a lot of experience, it was a game changer. So I wish if I could do something differently, I would hire, more executive level or like even director level people earlier. So I think that it just, like, knowing that I don't know everything and that I need outside assistance. I think it was one of the best things that I ever did.
Well, you're an inspiration. You're the American dream. We're honored to have you here. Where can people learn more about your businesses?
We don't sell online, but if they're interested in checking it out, they can go to generationv.com or gratefulgreendispensary.com and check out our website and locations and whatnot.
Well, please do that. Sarah Linden, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.